Storm Eunice hits the UK with powerful winds causing injury, damage and disruption. Coastal areas in the south were buffeted by gusts and huge waves, with people urged to be cautious.
I don't know what the actual wind speed is, but you can barely stand up in it.
I'm literally at a 45-degree angle. It's crazy.
The gale-force winds pulled down trees, tore through buildings and caused extensive damage in parts of the country. There were bumpy landings and relief for some.
It's been a day of chaos here on the railways too, with delays, cancellations and trees on the line.
The red alert danger to life warnings have now been lifted, but much of the country remains on alert for severe weather. Good evening. Large parts of the UK have been battered by one of the worst storms in decades, with major damage to buildings and millions of people being advised to stay at home as Storm Eunice hit. Two rare red weather warnings, meaning a danger to life, were issued but have now passed. There is still a serious amber warning in place for a large part of England until 9 p.m. and less severe yellow alerts for snow and ice in northern England and Scotland. The strongest gust of wind, a blistering 122 miles per hour, was recorded on the Isle of Wight at an exposed point of the island. The storm has brought widespread disruption with flight and train cancellations, school closures, power cuts in some areas and major bridges being closed. Our first report tonight is from our correspondent Danny Savage in Bristol.
In Bude this morning, a local landmark toppled.
Oh my God, I caught that on video!
As Storm Eunice swept in from the Atlantic, the water was whipped into huge waves and coastal areas saw the highest gusts.
I don't know what the actual wind speed is, but you can barely stand up in it. So I'm guessing it's 80, 90 miles an hour on top of the cliff.
The sea state along the south coast was frightening. By lunchtime, 10% of homes in Cornwall were without power, and the Isle of Wight had recorded a gust of 122 miles per hour.
Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, it's going over. Oh my gosh, whoa, oh my gosh. No. Okay, it's okay. It's not, nobody's hurt and it hasn't hurt the, it's just hurt the brand new fence. Whoa. Whoa.
And it wasn't just trees falling. That's the spire of St Thomas's Church in Wells being destroyed. Near Bristol, a speed limit on the M4 Prince of Wales Bridge wasn't enough to keep traffic moving.
For what's thought to be the first time ever, both bridges here across the Severn Estuary are closed because of the high winds. But the severe flood warnings here have now expired. Thankfully, the worst case scenario wasn't realised.
Temporary flood defences were not tested, but authorities say it isn't over yet.
On the back of this, we've got more rain coming, so there could be possibilities of further flooding as the week pans out. So let's get today out the way first, then let's make sure that all of our infrastructure, all of our defences are still in good shape.
As the day wore on, the storm headed east. For the first time ever, the southeast of England and London were also in a red warning area.
To see these strong winds inland across the south, where we just don't see them that often. That has been one of the biggest factors with Storm Eunice. One of the good things about the storm is the speed at which it's actually moved through. So it zipped through pretty smartly. But all storms are different. They all offer different things. But this one has been particularly intense. Red warnings are rare. To have two out at the same day is exceptional.
Gosh, it's ripped off.
In London, the wind ripped off the roof of the O2 Arena. It left a gaping hole. 1,000 people had to be evacuated from the site. The north of England and Scotland escaped the worst of the storms, but did get some heavy snow. This morning's rush hour was difficult, but things have now improved. The Humber Bridge, though, was another crossing closed unusually to all traffic, rather than just high-sided vehicles. Storm Eunice will be remembered for its mountainous seas and wind damage. There were fears it could have been much worse.
Well, conditions have improved since earlier. The M4 bridge here over into Wales has got traffic moving over it again, and I think for many areas it's now the recovery phase. Devon, Cornwall, Kent, Suffolk, places where there have been lots of power cuts. The aim, of course, to get many of those people reconnected as soon as possible. Worth noting as well what the Environment Agency said, to keep an eye on the weather over the next 3 days. More wind and rain expected, but not as bad as it has been today, Rita.
Danny, thank you. Well, in Wales, all train services were cancelled for the first time ever. The majority of schools were closed and tens of thousands of homes were left without power. Our correspondent Thomas Morgan has been speaking to some of those in the worst affected areas.
The sound will never, ever leave me. It was just heartbreaking to hear my daughter screaming.
Just before lunchtime in Newport, South Wales, Holly Price's house buckled under pressure from Storm Eunice, all as 5-year-old daughter Olivia was playing upstairs.
Opened the door, I could see all the houses, the roofs were hanging off, and grabbed my daughter and managed to grab any clothes that we could that we had on and just take her outside.
3 homes condemned for now on this street, but thankfully nobody was injured. Elsewhere, the seaside town of Porthcawl also felt the impact, the majority of its coastline businesses having to shut.
The seafront here in Porthcawl really bore the brunt of the weather here this morning, as within an hour of the red warning coming into force, it coincided with high tide, meaning that waves came crashing over the promenade here.
I've lived in Porthcawl many, many years, and I've never experienced it like this before. It's even taken my breath away, it's so windy.
Stronger than we've seen for a long time. You know, the lack of rain is a big help, but I haven't seen a wind as strong as this for a while.
At its peak this morning, gusts of over 90 miles per hour were clocked as Eunice turned over anything and everything in its path. For the first time ever today, all trains were cancelled as a precaution. Most schools also made the decision to close. Half-term started a day earlier than planned. Over 40,000 homes have been without power across the country, and although the Met Office's red warning ended lunchtime, the whole of Wales is now under an amber alert for wind until this evening, and the advice remains to stay indoors and to only travel if absolutely necessary. Thomas Morgan, BBC News, South Wales.
Well, in other parts of the country, it's been snow that's the issue. Our correspondent Dan Johnson is near Alston in Cumbria for us now. Dan.
Yes, it's really cold, it's wet, windy, it's wild up here on the Pennines this evening. The wind has just got stronger and stronger throughout the day, and there has been quite a bit of snow, hail and ice that's been proving a problem for drivers as well. So the roads have largely been quiet, though there have still been people out. Disruption on the trains as well. There's concern about the roof of Preston Station. Ferries in the Irish Sea have been disrupted, and there are power lines that are down already across the north. More than 1,000 homes in the northwest that are without power at the moment. So disruption still being caused, and another difficult night in store perhaps into tomorrow. And would you believe it, on the Wirral this afternoon, the Coast Guard had to tell 3 people not to go swimming in the sea.
Goodness. Dan Johnson, thank you very much. Well, Storm Eunice has also caused travel chaos across the country. Planes have struggled to land at airports, and gale force winds have brought trees down on railway lines. Well, our correspondent Emma Simpson is at Waterloo Station in London for us now. And Emma, how disrupted have services been?
It's fair to say, Rita, this has been quite a day on the transport front. The sheer scale of disruption, it's been hard to keep up. Now, tonight, for instance, here at Waterloo, all services are still suspended. Network Rail saying they're checking routes to make sure that they're clear of debris, that the trains are safe to run. And that's because you've just been saying loads of trees have been blown onto the tracks. Travelling into a storm, stomach-churning landings from the skies. The going's rough for this car ferry too. On the roads, the wind too strong for this lorry, and chaos on the rails. a roof lands on the tracks at Banbury. The disruption from Storm Eunice has been far and wide. Even before the storm hit, all train services in Wales were cancelled. Here's why. Carmarthen Station roof on the platform. Services in the southwest badly disrupted too. Every train operator in England's been dealing with delays and cancellations.
Disruption on the scale is almost unprecedented. There are trees down all over England and Wales. We've got thousands of colleagues out working with chainsaws and other specialist kit, desperately trying to get the railway open as quickly as we can.
It's lunchtime here at London's Waterloo station. Trains were running and then suddenly every service has been suspended and every train en route has been told to pull into the nearest stop until the worst has passed.
So we're not going home by train today, no.
This group's trying to get home to Portsmouth after a birthday trip.
Well, I was supposed to come to uni this morning, but they sent an email 20 minutes before the lecture saying that there's no uni, so I'm here for no reason and now I can't get home.
At Gatwick Airport, some planes aborted landings. Across the UK, more than 450 flights have been cancelled today. Jane Anson was en route here, but didn't make it.
The pilot came on again and said that there were no places to land in any of the other London airports. It wouldn't be possible to land there. They considered Amsterdam, but that was closed. They considered Edinburgh, but they said it was so snowy up there. So we turned around and came back to Bordeaux.
At Dover, ferry crossings also closed. The last boats to beat the storm tugged in to safety. As Storm Eunice passes through with all its force. Emma Simpson, BBC News.